Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen.
Okay, so I want to talk about scripting. Hi, I have questions about scripting. My son loves to use scripts from cartoons and kids' movies. Sometimes it's silly, but we are more concerned about the script that sounds threatening. For example, I will kill you for this from the Jungle Book movie. I will shoot you from The Secret Life of Pets. Now he uses those scripts when he's angry as well. I have heard 9-year-old boy was charged with a crime in Georgia for scripting from a game, I will burn down school with fire bottles. So I'm extremely nervous and desperate who to ask for help. My son loves school, but now I'm so scared to send him to school. I can't trust the teachers that they will not send my son to jail and charge him with a crime for scripting. Bless your heart, sending you a hug. This is a great question, Dr. Grand-Pichet.
It is a great question, and there's lots of different things you have to do or can do. First of all, you should talk to the teachers and make sure they understand that he's scripting. In fact, I would give those teachers a copy of whatever it is he's watching where that language comes, so that they know not to overreact. That's really, really important. And I feel your fear, and I agree with you. There's a lot of nonsense like that going on. I would actually go a little bit further, and I would maybe even get in touch with first responders in your area and let them know as well. Sometimes it goes beyond the school, the teacher is not there, the principal, who knows? I would make everyone aware of what's going on, first of all, so that basically this issue doesn't become something that causes legal issues in the future, first of all. Now, how to deal with it. So there's a lot of different ways. First of all, we have to kind of understand what it is. So a lot of times I feel like, and I've seen scripting with my kids for, gosh, 20, 30 years. Like it's one of the first things that I noticed with autism. So what I suggest is that you first figure out exactly why he's doing it. It could be that he's just trying to interact. A lot of times our kids want to converse. They don't know how to converse. What they see, now if you try to, Shannon, as you know, a lot of times for me, I try to understand the world from the perspective of a child who has autism, right? And if you try to do that, and if it just looks like to you that people are babbling to each other, you're not quite sure what they're saying, but they're communicating, and they're communicating using these words, but the words don't really have a lot of meaning. It's just what people do. They look at each other and they say words. And our kids try to do that. They try to say words to each other, and they're not paying attention that much to the meaning, because perhaps what they saw in the video is not unpleasant. It's somehow funny, or it's just part of a video that they enjoy, or there's music about it that they like, or it's an animal saying it, or whatever it is. To them, it's pleasant on the video. So they're not quite understanding exactly what it is. And I think it becomes important to try to help them understand the meaning of it. And this keeps pulling me in multiple different directions. One is the child needs to really understand the emotion that it evokes. So for me, it's more about going to the emotions lessons and trying to make sure the child, we have these lessons where, if I do this, how will you feel? And this is just a kind of a little bit further down the line in the same path, which is, if I say this to you, how will you feel? Now, when you go into those lessons, you'll see that we use tools. One of the tools is comic strips, where you basically will draw the child in just kind of stick figure, and draw yourself or another person in stick figure. And then you have the child with a speech bubble, and they're saying this. They don't have to be able to read. You just kind of keep repeatedly doing this. The child will start to understand. So you have the speech bubble of the child saying this, and then the person receiving the information now has a thought bubble maybe of, wow, this sounds pretty harsh or whatever it is. That does he really mean that or something like that? And then maybe a heart, like we have a little thing over the individual's heart to show them the feeling. And in that bubble, it's like, I'm really afraid. And those types of things, so that the child can start to understand that what they're saying is evoking fear. Not only evoking fear, but what will the other individual do when they're afraid? They might leave, they might go call a teacher and you will get in trouble. Like, play it out so that the child starts to understand this is all about cause and effect. Our kids have a very hard time understanding what they're saying and what it's going to produce in the environment. How is it going to affect people? How is it going to make them feel? This again, Shannon, of course, always goes back to lack of theory of mind or a deficit in being able to understand things from someone else's perspective. So see, already here we talked about 3 or 4 different lessons, right? So you need to have prerequisites. Child needs to understand emotions. Child needs to be able to understand cause and effect. Child needs to have some understanding of the other person's perspective. All of these types of things have to happen. And in the meantime, I would recommend that you don't necessarily allow the child to watch those particular areas or those particular videos, because until you can get it a little bit more under control, it's probably a good idea not to repeat that experience and make it more fluent. Lots of information there.
Yes, but I so appreciate that. I think one of the things that I've learned from you over the years, I say all the time that if I could apply what we did with autism to the other areas of my life, I would just be like so wildly successful. And part of that is I go right to the example about, we know that children on the autism spectrum, the number one cause of death is drowning. And so every year around this time of year, a lot of autism charities will get together and they'll say, okay, so, this one is going to give free swimming lessons. But at a certain point, everybody realized that alone won't get it done. You got to work on things from a lot of different ways. You got to work on, how do I teach the skill so that, first of all, they won't want to do this thing, but second of all, if it happens, how will they react? Then I got to train myself for how do I react to prevent it, and how do I react if it's happening? How do I train the community to react if it's happening? How do I train the community to prevent the thing from happening? And so I so appreciate all the things that you just said about, teaching and how you're going to prevent all those things from happening. But I also want to lovingly say to this mom who's in fear right now, that one of the greatest things that we can do for fear is to take action. We have to understand that, you're never going to be able to shore up everything in the world that you would want to shore up, because you can't change every person's mind. But I grew up in a community with my son where we had Emily Island, who was a great advocate, who works now with police departments all over the country. And Emily went to our police force and said, this is my son. This is what my son does. I'd like to, do a class for all of you, because if you ever get called to my house for a police call, I want you to understand my son on the autism spectrum. And so I was in a community where we were invited to the police department on a yearly basis, and we would bring my son in and he would look around and see the police officers, get in a police car, look into a jail cell, have conversations. Same thing with the fire department, and they got to know him so that I didn't have to fear if the police were called or if the fire department was called. I knew that my son knew what to do, and that the police, at least the police that we met, had a greater understanding of my address, where my house was, and that my kid had autism and what my kid did. So I would be wanting to tell your local police department and your principal. Somebody said have an IEP meeting and explain to them what scripting is. There's that great film. It was Academy Award nominated, Life Animated. It's about Ron Suskind, Pulitzer Prize-winning author, and his son scripted, and it's a whole movie about that. Like, ask them if you can do a showing at your child's school of the film to explain what scripting is. And I love your idea of showing them the movies of exactly where he's scripting from. And I hate it that we have children's movies that have these lines in them. What is wrong with us?
I know. And Shannon, now that you mentioned that film, the other one that I loved was Inside Out. Is that what it was called?
Oh, yes.
I love
Yeah.
that. Those are fun things for kids to watch. I mean, like, and they're fantastic animated films.
Yes, Inside Out is so great. In fact, we have had Pete Doctor, and I'm going to forget the other writer on Autism Live to talk about that film. But I love it because it really helps to teach that perspective taking, because each and every one of us has a little anger guy in our head, a little joy guy. So a great, great movie to watch with your kiddos to explain to them. We don't necessarily say everything that's in our head. Okay, I
And that,
got.
by the way, and what you just said, by the way, is another lesson called thinking versus saying. So we've
Yeah.
like now just mentioned 4 or 5 exact lessons, right?
There we go. It's a lot. But if you keep doing it, I go back to the mom who was saying, how can I get more, language from my child? I love when the thing about ABA is if you keep doing it and keep noticing if it's working, then it keeps working. Because if it isn't working, you adjust. But if you keep doing it and keep noticing if it's working, and the fact that he stood outside today and he said, "Burr, it's cold," that means what you're doing is working. And now you just have to rinse and repeat, move the goalpost a little bit, rinse and repeat. And it's amazing because you get there. Yesterday on my Facebook, a thing came up and I shared it of my son singing a song, and I was so excited on that day because he had been singing when he was little. We lost singing, and then singing came back. But he sings this Star Wars song, and I was looking at it and I was like, oh my gosh, this was towards the end of kindergarten, and he looks like he's doing so well. My memory of those years is that it was like our house was on fire and we were fighting every single day to get more language. And now when I look back on it, it seems like that was 20 years long. It
Yeah.
wasn't. It wasn't 20 years long. It was like a long year and a half. Where and even then at the end of a year and a half, we were still working to get things and massaging to get things. But I just want to remind that mom and everyone who's watching, do good quality ABA, check it with the data to see that you're getting progress, and then keep doing it. That is the recipe. Am I completely wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. Honestly, I mean, there's no better example than working and living with a child with autism than to say just take it a day at a time. Because, and I always tell parents, Shannon, I know it's so incredibly difficult, but it also is like time has just slowed down. Most parents don't ever really remember. I can tell you with my kids, I mean, I love them so much and I have all their childhood pictures still around me. But the truth is, I don't remember the first time that one of them said, "I love you." I don't remember all the little accomplishments of each of my children. And when you have a child on the spectrum, you remember every single one. It's a little bit harder getting there, but once you get to those accomplishments, they're single big things that are highlighted, and you will never forget them, and they're beautiful memories. And so, try as much as possible. Unfortunately, right now it's so hard that we can't even support most of our parents because of COVID, but try to enjoy the short period of time that is a growth period,
Yep.
and think of it that way.
One of the questions Alana asked me on her podcast was, what's my favorite quote? And I said, it's Dory from Finding Nemo, just keep swimming.
Yep.
because that's what you got to do. I got to let you go. I love you. Thank you so much for being here with us. And I just got to let her go 30 seconds early, but thank you for all of your wonderful wisdom. We appreciate you so much.
Always a pleasure. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thanks for watching Autism Live. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.